are
Here we go.
at the bottom of Samach Mabez, 60b. Yeah, 3 lines in from where the wide lines start. So the first word on the line is Taner Rabbanan. First 2 words is Taner Rabbanan. We're continuing the discussion about different things that people did, different enactments that were made once we lost the Beis HaMikdash. And the basic idea was that there has to be a lessening of pleasure in this world, as a remembrance that we're always mourning the Beis HaMikdash. Taner Rabbanan, Kishacharav Habayis, B'Shniya. When the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Rabu Prushin B'Yisrael. So many aesthetics, there became many aesthetics in the Jewish people. People stopped being so involved in this world, in the pleasures of this world. So they wouldn't eat meat, they wouldn't drink wine. Rabbi Yeshua joined them, and Amar Lahem, so sorry, he asked them, why aren't you eating meat? And why aren't you drinking wine? So Amrulo said, how can we do that? How can you eat meat? There used to be meat that was brought on the Mizbeach, and now it's gone because we don't have any more sacrifices. Drink wine. They used to pour wine libations on the Mizbeach. And now we don't have those wine libations anymore. So how can I drink any wine? Amar lahem im kain lechem lo nechel. If that's true, don't eat bread. Shikvar bat lemenachos. Some of the korbanos included bread. So that we say, yeah, but after bepeirus. So he says you can eat fruits. So he said, yeah, but peiros lo nechel. Maybe don't eat any fruits. Why? Shekvar batlu bikurim. There's no more bikurim. They said, yeah, but after repairs acher, meaning there are other fruits, not only the one of the 7 species. He said, maybe maim lo nishda. Shekvar batlu nisach, don't drink any water because there's no more water libations. So shasku, they were quiet. Amar lahem bini bo v'amar lachem shlolis albakolker. Listen, don't mourn too much. Shlolis albakolker yesher. To not mourn so much is impossible because we lost the Beis HaMikdash. Shekvar nigzer gzeira. There was a gzeira that we lost the Beis HaMikdash, and we have to mourn. L'sabel yoser midai, to do too much mourning is yesher. That's impossible. Why? Because the idea is she'ein goes in gzeira al tzibur alim ken rova tzibur yichol lamod ba, that we don't usually enact an enactment upon a tzibur unless they're able to withstand it. So to not eat bread, to not drink water. So those are things that's not feasible for the general public. Dechsiv v'me'era atem na'arim v'osi atem kovim. So the pasuk in Malachi is saying that that people there didn't bring their the right tithes, and they were cursed. They had to bring all their fruits together and go divvy out the tithes to the Kohanim and to the Leviim. And yet it says that you stole from me. Hashem's saying you stole from me at the Ma'aser. You didn't do it, meaning you were asked to do something, to bring all your fruits, all your produce, and to give it as tithes, give it as meiser, and yet you didn't do it. You stole from me because you didn't give it to Hashem because it was too much to do. Ela kach omer chachamim. So the chachamim enacted that we have to do something. We have to have some kind of balance of mourning, but not mourning too much. Sad adam es beiso besid. You can plaster your house with lime. However, umeshayer b'davar muat. We have to leave some of the inside of your house. You have to leave something. You have to leave a little bit in your house. That's not, painted. That's not limed. The kama. Amar Rav Yosef amal amal. You have to leave an amal and amal. This is right. You see in many houses. People buy a house, or there's a fire in the house. And they have to rebuild the house. Whatever it is, people make sure to leave an amma by an amma of a wall unpainted. Amar Rav Chisda, where should you put this amma by amma? Keneged a Pesach, corresponding to the front of your house. Meaning, when you walk into the house, there should be somewhere there an amma by an amma, which is not painted, not finished off, and that serves as a reminder that even though we own houses and we're living somewhat comfortably, however, we don't have a base of Mikdash, so we still have to mourn for that. Adam called Tarche Suda, so a person can prepare everything he needs for a meal. However, Mishayabo Davar Muat. However, he leaves something out of the menu. Maihi. What's an example of a Davar Muat that he doesn't prepare for the meal? Amar Papa Kast Arsana, some kind of fish brine. So once again, you're sitting down to eat and you can prepare every dish in your house, but you leave one thing out. And that also serves as a reminder that we don't have a base of English. She adorns herself with all her adornings, but she leaves something out. She leaves, she has one of her, earrings or necklace or bracelets that she leaves out, and that's going to serve to her as a reminder of that we lost the base of English. So what's an example of that? Maihi. Amarav Bas Tzida. So Bas Tzida is something that they used to smear on themselves.
See the hair on the temples.
Yeah, it was the hair on their temples. And they're for what? And they're.
So they said it was fashionable to remove the hair with the
they would remove the hair of the temples. That was fashionable, but because we don't have a base of Mikdash, they wouldn't do that anymore. So I guess it's really not only her adornments or like necklaces, really different ways to beautify yourself. So that was one way they used to beautify themselves, was to remove hair by the temple. And yet, once they enacted this, so that came to an end. All of this is from where? Shenamar in Meshkachech Yerushalayim. Pasuk says that if I forget Yerushalayim, Tishkach Yemini, you'll forget your right hand. So Tidbak Lashoni Lecheki, that your tongue will be stuck to the palate, I think. So right, this is really the source not to forget Yerushalayim. Right, really, it's the end of the pasuk. Yimeshkech Yerushalayim Tishkach Yemini. Tidbak Lashoni Lechiki. So Imlo Eskeri. Right, if I don't remember Yerushalayim, then my tongue will be stuck to my palate. Meaning you're not supposed to forget Yerushalayim. So my al rosh simchasi. The end of this pasuk says, "Imo ala es Yerushalayim." If I don't go up to Yerushalayim, al rosh simchasi. What's al rosh simchasi? Rav Yitzchak is a makla shevarosh chasanim. Many chasanim put ashes on their forehead, and that's what it means. You have to do that as a reminder that we're not there. We're not in Yerushalayim with the Beis Hamikdash. Where do you put the ashes? The makom tefillin. You put in the makom tefillin. Why? Shinamar, the pasuk says in Yeshaya, "Lasum la'avle tzion lasis lam pe'er takas efer." Pe'er refers to tefillin. So the people that mourn Yerushalayim, right? So they had their tefillin in the place of their efer, meaning the place that, in general, they used to put efer, they used to put ashes instead of their tefillin. So, in this case, the pasuk is saying here, now you should put your tefillin in place of the ashes. But generally, they had to put their ashes in place of the tefillin. The kol ha-mesaba al Yerushalayim, anybody who mourns over Yerushalayim, zoche v'roa b'simchasa. You see the incredible merit of one who mourns on Yerushalayim. It's not just that he's mourning for something in the past, but it actually merits him that he will see its simcha. Shenamar, as the pasuk says, Simchas Yerushalayim v'gilu ba kol oyhaveha. It says that Yerushalayim is going to be happy, and everyone who's happy for it will rejoice in its joy. Sisu ita masos kolamas album aleha. The people that were masabel on it are going to be sisu, are going to be very happy, very joyous with Yerushalayim. Tanya Amar Bishwal ben Elisha. Miyom shachar beis hamikdash dinhu shenigzar al atzmeinu shelecho basar shelish yayin. Really, once we lost the beis hamikdash, logically we should stop eating all meat and stop drinking all wine. Ella, ein gozing zer latzira linkin robat tzibur yichol lamud ba. We can't make decrees that most of the congregation is not able to withstand, and therefore we didn't do that. But really, he's saying, really, that's how severe it was. It was so severe that we should make those decrees. And from the day that there are bad decrees that were being decreed upon us, I believe Malchus Harishos is referring to the Romans. They were very harsh decrees, bad and harsh, evil and harsh decrees upon us. And what did they do? We couldn't do Torah mitzvahs anymore. We couldn't learn. No Daf Yomi. We couldn't do any mitzvahs. The Shua Haben. They wouldn't let us go into our Pidyon Haben, the redeeming of the firstborn. The Armila Yeshua Haben. Or they could, the Shavua Haben. Or they wouldn't let us go for a bris milah. All the way around. They wouldn't let us into the Shavua Haben, the week of the sun. That's referring to the bris milah of Amrilah, the Shua Haben, and that's I think that's referring to Pidyon Haben, the redeeming of the firstborn. Dinhu, this is like very intense. Dinhu shenigzar al atzmeinu. It was so bad, the destruction of the temple, we should decree upon ourselves, Shlo Lisa Isha, can't get married anymore, Ulahol Banim. But what's going to happen? Then you're going to have no more offsprings of Avram Avinu. They're going to call them Elah, they're going to automatically wither away. Ella, Hanach Lam Yisrael, rather leave it for the Jews, Mutav Shu Shogin, the Al Yumezidim. So, rather leave them, and they, better that they don't do things knowing that it's the wrong thing to do, that they shouldn't do the wrong thing. With the Shiu Shogin. Meaning what? Was it?
It's intentional, that it's unintentional rather than intent. In other words,
To get married to what? To right, meaning if you tell someone to not have children, not get married anymore, they're not going to listen to you. So the general concept applies to certain areas of halacha, that if you know someone's doing something wrong, but you also know that if you tell them that it's wrong, they're not going to listen to you. So mutim shiu shogin v'alti mezidim. That better that they should do the wrong thing without knowing that it's wrong. It should be a shogeg, rather than they know it's wrong and they do it anyways. A common example always was, if you're on a Shabbaton with non-religious children or non-religious Jews, and the Eruv falls down. That was always this. What do you do? So they're going to carry anyways. So is it better to tell them, and maybe you'll save some people from not carrying, or is it better to not tell them, because why? Because mutav shiu shogin v'altu mezidim. Hadron Allah chaska sabatim. Very good. We concluded the third parak. On to the fourth parak. So we're going to start talking about when you sell your house and you write in the document, I'm selling my house. So what's included in a house? So is your couch included? Is your back patio included? What are the things that are included in the sale of a house? Hamocher sabayis, one sells the house, and he writes in the document, I'm selling my house. Lo machar yitzia, he has not sold his yitzia. The Gemara doesn't talk about what a yitzia means, but it's some kind of house either attached to the back of the house or it's adjacent to the back of the house, and we'll see its purpose in the Gemara. The afal pishi psuchlasok, even if this yitzia is open to the house, it's still not part of the house. That when you write, "I'm selling my house," you've sold the yitzia also. And the reason is because when you sell a house, what are you selling? When you're selling a house, you're selling the tashmishin of the house, the usage of the house. A house is used for living, and you're going to sell the things that are essential for living. Okay, if you just write down, "I'm selling my house," lo esacheder shelifnim imenu. You also don't sell this back room. Back room is mainly used for storage, and that's not included in your sale. We know that if you have a roof and you can access the roof, so then there's a mitzvah to build a fence around the roof. So now, if you have an area there that's 10 tvachim with a fence, so it's like a little bit like its own area now. 10 tvachim is usually the amount where it's like its own area. So that's also not included. That's not really the living area. That's a separate area. That's the roof area. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, if it has this tzuras HaPesach, has this door frame, that sort of signifies that's really its own area, its own living area. So even if it's not 10 tvachim, so you would have thought maybe it should be sold because less than 10 tvachim is insignificant. But if it has a tzuras HaPesach, this door frame there, so that shows that it actually is significant. And because it is significant, it's its own area, and therefore that area is not sold with the house. Obviously, if you specify any of these things in the document, obviously that's sold with the house. But we're talking about hamocher sabayis. Stop, I'm selling my house. So now what's included in that sale? Because now the guy's going to walk away, the buyer walks away thinking he's acquired, your house and your roof and your back house. And you're saying, no, only the house itself. The other stuff are sold separately.
They're selling your house.
Correct. So it's really your loss for not really specifying when you said house, what did you mean? So it's also important that the buyer doesn't walk away thinking he's acquired so much more. I think they ask a question like, if this doubt ever comes up of how much you've sold, so can't you just, assess it by how much money was given over? Right. If $1,000 was given over, and usually a house with a porch and a back house costs $5,000, so why can't that be a good proof? But okay, fine. So what is this yitzia? If you sell a house, a stam, you don't sell a yitzia. What's a yitzia? My yitzia, hachi targimo, so afta. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Batra Chalila. So this afta is like this small little structure that's next to the house, and it's also used as its own little, somewhat of a living area, the back house. Rabbi Yosef says it's an area that has a lot of windows, and it's not so much for living, it's more to like cool off. You put a lot of windows there, and you can cool off there when it's very hot. Yeah, a fancy word for yitzia, no?
No, just have a random. I know yitzia. Attached chamber,
right? So basically, a small house in the back that people could go through and could be used for living a little bit. Okay, so Lamanda Amar after Lomas Davna, if that part, which is really more of a living area than your cooling off gazebo in the back, if that area is not sold, so Kol Shekain Bat Chalila is not sold. For sure, that area is not sold. But Lamana Bat Chalila, if you understand that Yitzia means the house in the back that's used really to cool off, if that's not sold, but maybe Aval Afta Mizdapa, maybe that area, the other area in Afta, it would be sold. It's a closed area, and it services more like a house services. People hang out there, people live there. So So that area would be sold. Tani Rav Yosef. Shalosh Shemos Yeshlo. Yitzia, Tzela, Ta. This Yitzia has three names, meaning this chamber is referred to with three different names, with three different names in Tanakh. A Yitzia, a Tzela, and a Ta. So Yitzia, Dichsiv, when it came to the first Beis Hamikdash, there were different chambers that were built behind the Heichal, behind the area. We have the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodashim, and there's a whole 3 layers of chambers there, different sizes. So Hayitzia Tachtona Chamesh Ba'amor Rechava, that the bottom chamber was 5 amos. So you see the word that's used to refer to a chamber is a Yitzia. Tela Dichsiv V'Hatzlo Sela Ela Tela Shalosh U'Shloshim Pa'amim. This is referring to a dream that Yechaskel had, also about different chambers in the third Beis Hamikdash, and he had a dream that there are going to be 33 amos. So, and the word there that's used to refer to a chamber is tzela. Yeah. Ta, the third word that means chamber. Back to Yecheskel. So ta dichsiv v'hata kana echad orech v'kana echad rachav ubein hataim chamesh amos. So he's talking about the Beis Hamikdash, and he says that this chamber, the hata, it had a reed, a long beam that was long, the kana echad rachav, and one was wide, and bein hataim, between the chambers, was chamesh amos. So you see that these 3 words are 3 different ways to refer to chambers. Yeah. Which I'm assuming it's brought down here, not just, as an interesting note, but I'm assuming, I'm just taking a guess for a second, but if you were to write any of these languages in your document, so then that also refers to a chamber, not just if you write down Tzela or Ta, not just Yitzia, but the other 2, I would assume if those are written instead of the word Yitzia, that would be enough to that'd be a good language to use to sell a chamber. Okay. So that which we said, that your Yitzia is not sold when you sold the house. So then, how big is the Yitzia? That back chamber, the chamber adjacent to your house. Omar Mar Zutra, Behuda Have Arba Amos. It has to be Arba Amos. That's enough to be considered significant. And if it's not that, so then that's insignificant. And that's really batal, that's nullified to your house. That's already part of the house. It doesn't have its own name for itself. It's sort of just like this area, which is part of the house. Once it has Arba al Arba, it has 4 amos. So then that's now significant enough that it's going to be considered its own area, and it's not going to be sold with the house. So, Amrle Ravina Mar Zutra. Ravina told Mar Zutra, Lididach de Amris Adave Ara Amos. According to you, who said that until this area has Arba Amos, so then it's not sold. So Elameata, what do you do with the following? Gabe Bor. When it comes to a pit, people used to have these different pits in their house to store water, like a reservoir of water. So the halacha there is, we'll see in a few daf, Detanan loas abor v'loas adus, afal pisha kosav lo umka beruma. So there, if you sell a house, you also don't sell the pit of the house. So even if you wrote, you're selling the deep parts of your house and things like that, you still haven't sold the pit. So he asks him, Hachanami, Ihave Arba Amos in Ilolo. He said, why not? It should depend. If the pit is Arba Amos, then it's not sold. But if the pit is not Arba Amos, then it's sold. So how come by this Yitzia, this chamber? It depends if it's 4 amos or not. If it's 4 amos, then it's not sold. And if it's less, then it's yes sold. When it comes to pits in the house, reservoirs of water, they're never sold, even if they're not 4 amos. So what should be the difference? If 4 amos is the amount that's significant, that should apply to a reservoir of water also in your house. And yet, we see that that's not included in the sale of your house. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Hachi hashta. Can you really compare the 2 cases of a reservoir to a chamber? Awesome. When it comes to a reservoir, the little area in your house that holds your water, that's a totally different function than your house. Your house is to live in, and the pit is to store water in. So there, it already has its own identity. You don't need to, give it significance because it's arba amos by arba amos. However, the back house, the back chamber, so that's something which it's very similar to a house. You also live in it a little bit. So that you understand that until it has arba amos, it's going to be considered as just part of the house. It's insignificant. Once it's arba amos, so then it's significant, and therefore it's not going to be included in the sale. Okay, moving on. We said that there's this back storage area that's also not included in the sale of your house. When you just sell a house, once again, you haven't specified any of these things. You just wrote, I'm selling my house, and that's all you wrote. The back storage area is also not considered part of the house, and therefore that is not sold. Says the Gemara, isn't that obvious? The part of your house that you do live in sometimes and you hang out in, and even if you want to cool off there, but it's there for your usage to live in, that's not sold. So for sure, your storage area where you don't live in, you just store things, that's for sure not sold. It's interesting, like, how'd you view a garage? So it depends. Our garage is a storage area. Steve's garage is a garage for cars, So would either of those be included? And if you're selling your house, so probably not, right? You don't live in the garage. It's there to store things. Mine store boxes, yours stores vehicles. Well, we both don't, but if you make it into a bedroom, let's say, or a play area, so that already might be different. Because that's really part of the house. Right, correct. Yeah, really. Remember, hope he's listening.
It was actually called
Coulter. But that house? Before you moved to the other house. So what's the added novelty of the Mishnah that a storage house is not included in the sale of your house? Turning the page. Lo tzricha the afagav the meitzer la mitzri abarai. Okay, now we're going to begin a whole world of Rav Nachman. So you need this case of the back house in a situation that the seller demarcated the boundaries of his house, and he marked off where his property ends. So you would have thought that since this back house, this storage house, is included in those demarcations, it's also sold with the house. So let's say, he marked off what he's selling, and that's what's going to be sold. So maybe this house should be included too. That the Mishnah told us that he only sold the house and the boundaries that he made. So it's everything except for this, this storage room. And who is this opinion like? So yeah, that's going to be like the opinion of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman is going to also talk about people that sell things and they have their property is marked off, and yet not everything is sold that's in those boundaries. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Kidder of Nachman, the Amar of Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Hamocher Bayis Lechavero. Someone sells a house to his friend, Bebira Gedola. It sounds like there were smaller houses in the area where there are bigger houses. So like an apartment to a apartment building. So let's say you would sell an apartment in an apartment building. So even though you marked off which area you're selling, you told them, the house that's east of that house and west of that house, that's what you're getting. Meitzarim hirchivlo. So Rav Nachman says that really it just expanded boundaries. Not everything included in those boundaries is what's going to be sold. Really, he made the boundaries too large. These are not the boundaries that everyone knows about. So not everything included in those boundaries is actually sold. So hold on, what's the case? Hey chidami. So ilema de karule lebayis bayis ulabira bira. If everyone refers to an apartment as an apartment and a bira, let's just call it an apartment building, as an apartment building, so pshito, that's obvious. If you sold a house, an apartment, bayis zavinle, bira lo zavinle. You only sold a apartment, you didn't sell the apartment building. So you must need this case, ela de lebira nami karule bayis. Some people, when they refer to the apartment building, they also call it an apartment. That apartment over there. And they're really referring to much more than just one apartment. So then, if everyone calls an apartment building a bayis, so when you sold bayis, kulo zavinle, you sold the entire apartment building. So what's the case that we need Rav Nachman's novelty for? Lo tzricha deruba karle bayis lebira bira. Most people call a house, a apartment, an apartment, and an apartment building, an apartment building. However, the economy de la bira karule bayis. Some people refer to an apartment building as an apartment. So what would you have thought? Ma'u de tema kulos avanle. You would have thought that if you only wrote down bayis, let's say it means your apartment, so then you would sell the whole thing. You'd sell the whole building, not just the one apartment. Kamash Malon says Rav Nachman, he told us, you should have written the person should have written, I left you nothing. Meaning, if he wants to sell the entire apartment building, he should have written in the document that nothing was left. I sold you all the apartments. From the fact that he didn't write that and he just wrote bias, so then it only refers to the apartment and not the apartment building. So 1 second. So too really in our case, when you're selling something, like in our case, you were selling a house, and there's demarcations, and you marked off where it is. So maybe you'll say that you sold everything inside of that area, and you left for yourself nothing. But that we said no. Things like unless you specify that, things like the storage house in the back are not included. Only your house is sold. Right, so you can imagine I'm selling you the house that's east of this street and west of that street, right? Or I'm selling you. So what's included in that? All your property that's within that area is included, or no? Only your house is included. So that was the mission. The mission told us that in such a case, don't think that anything which is east of that street and west of this street, whatever you own in that area is included. No, because if you want to sell that whole area, you should have specified it. But instead, you didn't specify it. So what do we have left? Only your bias. Only your bias is sold. Only your house is sold, and not the area in the back, not the storage area in the back. Yeah. Okay. V'amar Rav Nachman, Amar Abba Ravua. Hamocher sal lechaveron. Same idea. You sell a field to a friend, bebika gedola, in an area with many fields. And now you did the same thing. And even though now you specified, I'm going to sell you the field east of that field and west of that field, and you marked off its boundaries. So we say mitzarim hirchivlo. Really, the boundaries were expanded. So meaning not everything that was east of that and west of that field were sold. So, yeah. So now, what's the case? What's the case that you sold a field and only that field is sold, but not everything in the expanded boundary area is also sold. So Hechidami, basically the same case as before. If everyone refers to a field as a field, and a valley, an area with many fields, they call that a bika. So then obviously when you wrote down sada, you sold the sada and you didn't sell a bika. Sada zavinle, bika lo zavinle. The ela de la bika nami karale sada. People refer to this area with many fields as just sada. So if they refer to this area, this valley with many fields, as a sada, so then if you wrote down sada, kula zavinle, then you've sold everything. All the fields. That's what everyone refers to it. Lo tzricha de ika de la sada karale sada ulabika bika. The ikanami de la bika karale sada de la bika karale sada. Really, most people refer to a field as a field and a valley as a valley. Some people refer to this valley of many fields. They actually call it sada. And now you wrote down that you're selling your sada. So what do you mean by that? So you would have thought, you wrote down sada, so the buyers acquired everything. And it's on the seller to be more specific about what he's selling. Since there are people that refer to many fields as sada, so the buyer is the winner over here. He really gets everything. Kamashmal on that, they made this enactment. That's what Nachman really said. They made this enactment. Since you didn't write in your document that I sold you, that I left nothing for myself, and I sold it all to you, you didn't write that. Shmami, no, we learned from there that really you did leave some over, shiure shire, and therefore, since you didn't write, I left you nothing, we assume that you did leave some things for yourself, and therefore we don't assume that you sold the entire bika, then all the fields in this valley. Rather, you only sold one field. One second. Yeah, the Rishbam points out that the Chachamim established that you have to write this, and if you want to sell everything, then you have to write this into the document. Why? Because there were people that would expand their boundaries. They would sell, and then all of a sudden they wouldn't sell everything which is inside the boundaries. And it would cause fights and it would cause arguments. So they made it clear that if you want to sell something, you want to sell all of it, so specify. I'm selling you, so if you have an apartment in an apartment building and you want to sell the whole apartment building, make sure you specify, I'm not leaving for myself anything. And now we know that it's all going to be sold to the guy. Apparently this caused a lot of confusion. They would say, I'm selling you things from east over there to west over there. No, I didn't mean all of it. I only meant my house. So why did you write down those boundaries? So that caused a lot of confusion. So this way they said, if you want to sell everything inside that area, and insert in the document, I'm leaving for myself nothing in this area. And then we know everything in that area that you demarcated is going to be sold. If you didn't do that, so then we only can go from what it says in the document. A sada will refer to a field, not all the fields, and a bias will refer to an apartment, and not all the apartments in the apartment building. Even though you have your demarcations, but that's not going to be significant for us to sell everything which is in the middle of those demarcations. But says the Gemara, there's like the exact same case. When you sell an apartment in an apartment building and a field, an area of fields, we just copied and pasted, the exact same thing from Rabbi Nachman twice. So why do you have to have both cases? One of an apartment in an apartment building teaching us that you didn't sell the whole apartment building, and a field, an area of fields, teaching us that you didn't sell all the fields. Let's see if we can get through this. So says the Gemara, utzricha. v'tzricha. The yashminan bayis mishum dehat tashmisha lechud v'hat tashmisha lechud. Aval bika the kula chad tashmishahi ema kula zavinle. So each apartment, each little house in the bigger apartment building has its own function. So maybe there you'll say that you're only selling this one apartment because each one has their own, they're their own unit. But in a field, so like all the fields in the bika, they all serve really the same purpose. So there you would have thought that you're selling them all the fields. Sorry. An apartment building, those are different usages. A bias and a bira. A bias is a bias, and that's one house, and a bira is the whole apartment building. Those are two separate things. Therefore, the apartment building is not included in the word bias. And therefore, we say that really his boundaries just expanded, but he's not selling everything inside his boundaries. However, all the fields in the valley, they're all there for one purpose: to plow them and to work them. So there, maybe when you said sada, you're really referring to all the sados, and therefore we have to teach you that no, you're only referring to one sada. And now let's go the other way. The a field. So so you didn't have to really demarcate your boundaries because one second. Steve has a translator? Yes, by a bika. 1 second, sorry. By a bika, if you only had the ruling by a bika, so then, mishun lemimtzar it wasn't so accurate. All the boundaries of a field are much less accurate. So maybe in that case, that's where we say that you only sold this one field, but not all the fields. But a bias is very accurate, where each thing is sold, where each thing is demarcated. He has accurate boundaries, and yet he didn't draw accurate boundaries. He drew very expanded boundaries. So maybe there we'll say that he actually sold all the apartments in the apartment building. So that's where Rav Nachman had to teach us both cases. Yeah, and maybe we'll stop here.